course, what's on everybody's minds and hearts this week, and hopefully for a long time, is Reb Chaim Kanievsky, obviously. I think one thing that comes to mind when we think about Reb Chaim Kanievsky is we look all over Chazal, be it Mishnayos, the last parak in Avos, be it Gemaras, all over. We see a tremendous haflaga, tremendous what would look to the simple eye like an exaggeration about the madregas of a Talmud Chacham, about the Loimet Torah, the Talmud Chacham. Tremendous haflaga. Chazal talk about it and say different things. I'm talking about Noilam Hazeh, not even Noilam Haba. Different things, madregas, that he'll come to in this world, and they sound a little exaggerated. And then came along about Reb Chaim Kanievsky. You saw that a lot of those divrei Chazal were true. A lot of those divrei Chazal actually happened and took place in him. Last time we spoke about the fact that the Aron is Einem in Amida. The Aron did not take up space in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, which is against all Teva. In nature, there's no such thing as something that doesn't take up space. Everything takes up space. And we said that it has to do with the fact that the Luchas were in the Aron, so the Aron represents the Torah. The Torah defies all nature. The Torah does not work with the laws of nature, the laws of space. The Zerayas, it doesn't work with the laws of time. The Torah does not work with the laws of nature. The Torah is above the laws of nature. And there are a lot of chazals that the Talmud Chacham, the Loimet Torah, also gets to that madrega. Where do we see it? We could talk about it, we spoke about it. Where do we actually see it? We saw it, I think we saw it in Reb Chaim Kanievsky. Stories, things, madregas, nothing made sense. Nothing made sense. Because the Taka doesn't make sense. He's the Loimet Torah, he's the Talmud Chacham, he's above nature. Taka doesn't make sense. It's something else, it's a different dimension. He wasn't working with the same dimension that we were working with. There's a Gemara in Chulin that Pinchas Ben Yair wanted to go to do a pidyon shvuyim, get somebody out of jail. He comes to this river, it's called the Ginoi River, and he says to the river, Ginoi, chaluk li meimecha, split for me your waters. He's telling the river, split for me your waters. And they have some little conversation back and forth. Why shouldn't I? Lamai said splits, and he goes through and he does his pidyon shvuyim. The Or Chaim Parshas B'Shalach asks a kasha. He says, Chazal tell us that by the Yam Suf, Hashem made a Tanai by Ma'aseh Bereishis with the Yam Suf that when the Yidden come, when we're going out of Mitzrayim, the Yam Suf is going to split. Why over here there did not have to be a Tanai? There was no Tanai. You see that the water splits for Pinchas Ben Yair even without a Tanai. And also, Stam, you could ask, what's the whole thing about the Yam Suf, the whole nest? We have a Yam Tif. If it happened for Pinchas Ben Yair, it sounds like he just walked over to the river and said, Chaluk li meimecha. Or Chaim says like this. Or Chaim says that, you know what that Tanai is? It wasn't a specific Tanai with the water, with the Yam Suf. It wasn't a specific Tanai at that time. Hashem has a Tanai with the Bria. His Lashon is, Li'is kfufim l'Torah l'Amalel. There's a Tanai with the Bria that they're going to be kafuf, they're going to be subordinate to the Torah and to those who harav over the Torah. There's such a Tanai. That's what Teva is. There is no Teva when it comes to Torah and Amaleh. That was the Tanai that he made with the Yam Suf. And he brings down a lot of midrashim that it split because of Moshe Rabbeinu. He says because before Matan Torah, Moshe Rabbeinu had already the koyach of Torah, and that's why it split specifically for Moshe Rabbeinu, because he calls him a Ben Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu was a Ben Torah, he calls him. And he says that's why the water split. So in other words, the Or Chaim is learning that for Torah and Amaleh, Hashem made a Tanai. When he created the world, he made a Tanai. Li'is kfufim l'Torah l'Amaleh. There are no laws of nature when it comes against the Talmud Chacham or the Torah in any which way. The Leshem says it a little bit different. The Leshem just says that Kriyas Yam Suf was before Matan Torah and Pinchas Ben Yair is after Matan Torah. But they're both going with the same concept that the Teva, there is no Teva when it comes to the Torah. Now, to understand it on a very simple level, of course we can understand it. The Chazal tell us that the Hashem was mistakel b'raisa bara alma. The way he created the world was through, so to speak, if Hashem needs tools, the Torah were the tools for Hashem. So one who learns the Torah and the Torah itself, one who learns the Torah and the Torah becomes a chelik of him, so he has Hashem's toolbox. So if you have the toolbox, you have the same toolbox Hashem created the world with, so you could play around with the world that Hashem created. On a simple level, it's very understandable. I'll go upon them, these are things that we learn about, these are things that we read about. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky, we actually saw it. I think that's something that we actually saw. Let's take Lamashal, the famous story of the grasshopper, right? Reb Chaim Kanievsky is learning the halachas of grasshoppers, right? There's different halachas with the legs, the this, the that. He's learning the halachas of grasshoppers, and he had a suffix about a certain. He had a suffix how to understand a certain chazal. All of a sudden, he turns around. On his window, there's a grasshopper, exactly what he was looking for, sitting on his window. So it's a very famous story. And by the way, recently there was a video there was a Talmud of his that used to ask him a lot of shilas. The Talmud asks him if the story is true, and he says, "Yeah, the story is true." He said, "Yeah, the story is true." I saw such a video. Huh? Yeah, Chaim Kaz asked Rabbi Yashu about the story. Asked him? I heard that he asked Rabbi Yashu. Rabbi Yashu said, "Yeah, it happened by Ragois Maimonides. Happened by Ragois Maimonides already." But anyway, the story. But anyway, there's a video of him saying, "Yeah, the story is true." Yeah, that happened, and that's of course that's not teva. Right? That's not teva, because it's by him nothing was teva. A lot of the things he said, a lot of things we didn't understand it. A lot of things taka. If he's saying it in a teva way, these are things that would have took 5-6 hours to say. His madrigas in limud and yedidenu and Kollel kula that we saw, even those things didn't make sense. I once heard from somebody many years ago that he said his father heard the Chaznish told him that the Bekiyas of Reb Chaim Kanievsky, this was the Chaznish is still alive, so he couldn't have been older than 30. The Bekiyas of Reb Chaim Kanievsky reminds him of the Rogatchover. And the Rogatchover is a world famous genius, and the biggest geniuses of all time. And Reb Chaim Kanievsky was not. And the Chaznish is saying that his Bekiyas reminds him of the Rogatchover. We're talking about things, nothing was teva. It wasn't teva. The madrigas that we saw by him were mamish the things we read in Chazal, and these are the things that we saw by him. Kol Torah Kula every year. I think that doesn't. And until a couple of years ago, there was times he was answering letters all day. Remember? No, not all day, but he was answering a lot. Remember all the letters everyone used to send him? So it's not hours and hours. So where does this all fit? Torah is above time. Torah is not meshubah to time. You got to the loymet Torah, to the person that the Gemara in Kedushin says, that it says that eventually after a person harvests learning, it becomes Sayrasai, it becomes his own Torah. He became one and the same with the Torah. That's it. There was no teva anymore. Nothing made sense, literally. If we read the Mishnayos in Avos in Perek Vav, the Mishnayos talk about the Talmud Chacham. If you want to talk about Reb Chaim Kanievsky, you just read the Mishnah, and it's mamash him. Zeichel Advarim Harbe. Malbashtei Anova V'yira. If you want to describe him, it's Malbashtei. What was he? He was Anova V'yira. That's what he was. You looked at him, that was Anova V'yira. The Torah is Malbashtei Anova V'yira. The Mishnah says, Megalin Loi Razei Torah. Megalin Loi means it's not coming from his Haravanya. It's already, once he reaches a certain level, it's Megalin Loi Razei Torah. He got Razei Torah that they were Megalatim V'na Shamayim. And that's mamash what you saw. New things that nobody else knew. Nasa k'mayin amizgaber or k'nor she'ein a paisik. That's what it was. Mayin amizgaber nor she'ein a paisik. So normally there's something called, the Mishnah say later, there's something called emunas chachamim. Right? There's something called emunas chachamim. You have to believe in the chacham. I think Reb Chaim Kanievsky was fakir. You didn't have to believe him and then you got the thing. He caused emunas chachamim. Someone had a suffix. Is the taka such a madrega? Is the taka such a madrega of the Talmud Chacham that can reach so many levels? Emunas chachamim. He caused the emunah and the chachamim. There's a famous Rambam. The Rambam says that if somebody learns Torah at night, his lashon is ve'einem avatam mimena afilu laila achas yizoichet a keser shel Torah. So what does that mean, keser shel Torah? Okay, so Torah is a malucha. The Mishnayos say Torah is a type of malchus, and there's something called keser Torah. What does that mean? You know what it means? It means that if people, all our friends, anyone we know, anyone in our community is going to Eretz Yisrael, he comes back, asks the person, did you go to the Kollel? And did you go to Bnei Brak to see Reb Chaim Kanievsky? You know what that means? That means keser shel Torah. That's what that means. For a person to turn into a sight, he wasn't charismatic. You barely even got a bracha if you were lucky. If you were lucky, you barely got a bracha. So what's everyone running for? Everyone's running for keser shel Torah. That's what they're running for. Nobody knew. Anyone knew why they're running? There was the Gemara said called Loy Torah B'Layla Chut Shel Chesed Mashal Cholav B'Yoyim. They were going for the Chut Shel Chesed that was Mashal Cholav B'Yoyim. You saw a chain, and you had no idea what you're seeing. You had no idea what you're running for. You had no idea what you're going there for. You didn't get anything out of it. You got one thing. You just saw something else. You saw someone and something from a higher dimension. And I think that he was the big loss, besides everything else, of course, the big loss is we mamish had a testimony to all the divrei Chazal about the madrigas of a Talmud Chacham.